Hi everyone, welcome to today's customer exclusive webinar, the Diagram Presentation Layer. My name is Katie and I will be your host during today's webinar presented by Bethany Maddox. We're excited to help you maximize communication with your stakeholders as you work through your system development. Bethany serves Vitex customers primarily at the support desk as a customer care specialist. Between support cases, she manages the overall vision of customer care at Vitex, developing instructional screencasts on various core and Genesis topics and elements of software documentation. She has often served as host, writer, and technical manager of many webinars throughout her tenure at Vitex. Before Bethany gets started, I do have just a few housekeeping items. We will be answering questions today at the end of the presentation. Please send your questions in as soon as you think of them through the question tab on the webinar control panel. Our webinar is being recorded today, so if you experience connection problems during the live presentation, you will be able to access the recording in the My Support area of the Vitex website. If you have any questions regarding the recording, please contact us by emailing support@vitexcorp.com. I'm now going to turn the presentation over to Bethany. Welcome and thank you for joining us.
Hi, Katie. Thank you for the introduction. We'll dive right in here to today's content, and this is all about making your diagrams look great and communicate even better. Most of the people who are core users understand that while the technical accuracy of core's diagrams is critical to the model and the success of your project, in order to communicate effectively, we need to have some options to move beyond engineering accurate diagrams. We need to maintain the power and consistency of core's diagrams while leveraging some visual information to enhance communication, make it clearer, help people understand where to look, and what the important information is in a particular view. So, as we detail the options today, I'm going to start with the most basic, and also some that might have a little less impact, and we're going to work up in complexity and to things that have a little more impact. So let me get out of PowerPoint here, and we will get right into core. If you've been viewing my webinars at all, you know I like to get right into core and do these things live and show you how to do it. We're going to start with talking about resizing nodes on a diagram. This is one of the first steps you are going to take when you have a diagram in your view and you're ready to change it just a little bit to make it clearer, make it align better, make it clean. So we'll start with resizing nodes. Now, it's natural to make this adjustment so that all or most all of the text displays properly. In this particular view, you see that I don't have any information that is truncated. Let me show you what that would look like. Here you see I now have too much text for the size of the node, and it is truncated with an ellipse. You will see this with particularly long names, especially in item icons, where it's a smaller icon than the functions, as shown here in the EFFBD. So you watched me make it small. You see how to make it big. I just click on it. Handles appear. I can stretch it from any one of these handles. I'm always a fan of the corner ones because we've learned through most products on our computers that helps maintain the aspect ratio, and that is wonderful. However, when you grab in core, if you were to stretch it from one of the sides, you will find that it does change the aspect ratio of the node, but it does not change the text at all. So your text is still going to look great. If you like that little bit of extra space, it's available there for you without messing up the text. So those are managed independently. So you saw me do that using the handles. You can also do this using the toolbar. And if you come up to the toolbar just to the left of the icon templates, you'll find the Autosize button. If you click on this, you're going to get some options. A few of the options are grayed out because they only apply when you have multiple icons selected. Right now I just have the one, so I can auto size it from all directions and just shrink it down to perfectly match the text on all sides. I can shrink it down so that only the height changes and the width stays equal. I love that one. I like width to stay the same. Even when heights are different, it makes things look cleaner and clearer. And then the reset icon size. If I've mucked with it and really want it just to go back to default, I can use that one. I use it a lot, and so we'll go ahead and use that one now and set it back to the default. So that's how you do a single node. We can also do this for multiple nodes. We have different multi-select options. I can, on any diagram, just click my mouse, drag and draw a box around what I want to select, let go, and those are selected for me. This is great when things are all together that I'm trying to select. And if we click the sizing icon now, we see that we have a few more options. These will set them equal width, setting them equal height. So we have a variety of things here. I'm going to show you what happens when I use the auto size height, where it's going to change just the heights but not the widths. If you have a lot of variety in the amount of text that's in your nodes, sometimes this one looks good, and it's one that I tend to use. So again, personally I like to keep the width the same, and Core's provided you with some options so that you can meet your own personal preferences there. Now that was the drag method of multi-selecting. You may also be familiar in Core of the ShiftClick method. You use this probably in a lot of other tools on your computer. So I'm holding down my Shift key and I'm just going to select 3 different things that are not connected. This is great when I don't want everything. And then again, these options are available. And then the last way is simply to Control A to select everything in the diagram, and then I can do all of them at once. On a diagram like this, I tend not to use this one. And the reason why is I might want to size my item icons, which are all of the green ones here, differently than I want to size my function icons on this view. So I tend not to use it in an EFFBD, but in other diagrams, like a physical block, I'm more apt to use the Control A and let it resize everything. Now there are some exceptions to resizing with these commands, so I want to make sure we call that out. And that's on the N squared and the IDEF0. If we look at the N squared, we can see the column and row layout. If I were to manually resize this formatted request and make it really big, some other things are going to have to move. Okay, the things on the side here are going to have to move, and it's going to bounce them around. So in the N squared, Core will require you to keep all icons of a certain type the same size. And so we do these changes instead of doing them right here on the diagram. You can do them through diagram options. If you click the button, as this button here looks like a sheet of paper with some check marks on it, you can just click on that and then use this button. It says use local icon settings. Just click that and it will show you information for the icons right here on this view. So you can change the size. If I want to make my icons, which are the functions in the diagonal, maybe I want them to be perfectly square. I can do that right here. Click OK and they're going to change for me. So I'll do all of that there. You'll see that Core then did adjust to keep the rows and the columns all lined up. There are similar restrictions on the IDEF0. Core will enforce the functions to be in the diagonal, and manual resizing could affect that. So again, you'll want to do that from diagram options. Now, resizing, we've talked about it in the sense of making it look good to fit the text. But there's another reason you might want to do that, and this is when you have a lot of inputs and outputs on a behavior diagram, or a lot of interfaces and links on a diagram on a component. So let's take a look at that and see how we can affect the way things look, say, on a physical block. Okay, here we see that this customer's icon has 4 connections to it, 3 on one side alone. Right now we have the icon sized pretty big and we've given plenty of space. But if this were to be smaller, you'll see how this really makes for unclear communication scenario. These blend together, you're not necessarily certain what's what. If this were in a really big diagram, that could get confusing. And so manually resizing also has the benefit here of making more room for connections, such as interfaces and links in this case. Now that I've resized them and made them big, I'm just going to move a few things back to places that look great. So you see how I'm clicking on the line, grabbing the handles, just dragging them over a little bit. I can also grab these labels and manually adjust them just a little bit as well. So I have stretched my customer's icon out to make more room and have clearer communication. This is super important when you start to publish these things for consumption by other people. When you are reading your diagrams and you know your model, there's an awful lot of things that you are going to know in your head and forget that may not be clear to other people because you may take them for granted. So this is a really important thing to do, to take a look at them and make sure you've got them spread out enough to be clear. So after we adjust sizing, aligning nodes on a diagram is helpful. To get things to line up well, give good space between information, is just really, it's a simple but highly effective tool. So what you'll want to do is to first adjust the placement of the element you want to align to. So we're going to go back to this EFFBD, and I'm going to make these three line up. So I want to give plenty of space. So I'm going to use this one right here, and I'm going to get it right where I want it aligned to. And then I'm going to select it. Then I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select Tasking and then Data. So I've told Core by selecting this one first to align them to this one. Now I'm going to go up to the toolbar and click the alignment icon. And here's where we get options. We have left-right alignments. We have top-bottom alignments. We're working with the top-bottom, so I'll grab the middle one, and Core will jump them down. Now I have just a tad of manual adjustment to bring these over. And I do this all the time. As I moved them over, I got them unaligned, so I'll just grab that icon again and line them back up, and they look great again. So this kind of alignment is super powerful to give really clear communication. Sometimes you want them stacked the way I had them, and sometimes you really want them lined up. You can do this with icons of different types. So you'll see I can move inventory product over here. We had them nice and aligned, and that's really what we wanted. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring them down a little bit closer to where I want them, and then I'm going to align them to this. So that's a left-right alignment. There we go. So that's really simple to use with the alignment tools. Now, there are some constraints, and we need to talk about that. Diagrams like this EFFBD have limitations on where you can move, say, functions. Item icons can go almost anywhere, as you know, but these functions have to stay in their branch. So I would not be able to align these two functions in a top-bottom alignment. Core is simply going to tell me, I'm sorry, you can't do that. If you see an error message when you're trying to align, just take a moment, see what it says. This is not what I would call an error. I would call this an alert that's giving you some useful information. So definitely take a look at those when you get the pop-ups. So again, those exceptions are important to note. On a more structured diagram, like an EFFBD or a sequence, your more free-form diagrams like spiders, physical block, and such, those will have much fewer restrictions. Now, just like resizing, there are exceptions on a couple diagrams, and that's the N squared and the IDEF 0. Again, N squared, they line up in rows and columns. There's no need to center or align them to the middle or whatnot. It's already done for you. And then in the IDEF 0, the functions are aligned on the diagonal, and again, there's just no need because it's always done for you. So those two diagrams stand out in that they cannot, they don't work the same with alignment and resizing. Moving on to font options. These are available to add emphasis to the fonts that are in your view. There's a lot you can do, so let's just take a look here. I'm going to select this function and just change the one. I can make it bold. We've got options right here in the toolbar, bold, italics. I can change the font color. Let's make that a bright orange. It's a little more brown. I can change the line colors. Let's make that a bright, well, blue won't stand out on this blue background. Let's make it yellow, so there's a blue. We can change the fill color of an element. So I'm doing some pretty bright, outlandish, pretty bad colors, quite on purpose. You'll see I accidentally made my fonts in my background way too close in color, and they don't look great. So I'm going to change that and maybe just put it back to a gray. There we go. So you just watch me make a bad color choice. Do be careful with your color choices to make sure that you have great contrast. While I'm talking about contrast, I'll go ahead and add that when you're working in Core, this blue background of the whole diagram is pretty useful. And this is very classic, and a lot of engineers like this. And it's easy to see on the screen. The contrast on your screen is great. However, I find when I'm doing presentations or I am printing, say, an SDD, I actually prefer these not to have the blue background, and so I like to change that, and that is easily changeable. And we can just go to Diagram Options and grab the fill here and change it to white. And it's changed. Now again, note the contrast. You'll see that makes my white color choice here a bad one. So if I really need it to be called out, I may maybe change that to red. Oops, I didn't apparently get it accurately. Let me grab that. Oops, and change it to red. There we go. You see that stands out much better. So beware your color choice, you also have all of the same options. I talked before about the different methods of doing a single select and the different multi-select options. You can do those as well. I can just draw a line around some things that I want to change the colors on, get them that way, and change my colors. I can get the whole diagram through that. I can Control A to get all of those as well. So all of those multi-select options are right here for you to change your font color, your line colors, your fill colors on the diagram, icons, the fill colors of the background, and so there's a lot of options here to do some color. Now, moving on, I want to talk about icon templates. These control what you display in the node. So let's get back to our EFFBD. This is a place I'm really comfortable, so we'll work here a lot today. An icon template controls what information is displayed in the node. So my item icons are just showing a name. My function icons are showing a number, the element name, and its allocated to relationship. If I select an element on the diagram and look up in the toolbar, this drop-down is going to tell me which icon template is currently being applied. If I want to change it, I can simply come up here and change. So maybe I want number name, no separator, which is a nice clean look and one I use a lot because I'm a bit of a minimalist. Some of our folks like the more information where I can see the allocation to a component, and those are available for you depending on your preference. So I changed it with just one. All the multi-select options are still available, so I can get both of my functions using the shift-click method and change them to anything that I want. Same thing for my item icons. I'll use a shift-click method since I don't want to get my functions. I can just use that and change them all to, let's do number name, no separator. So I have those options as well. Now, we covered this in depth in our last webinar, including how to create new icon templates and whatnot. So this is as far as I'm going to go into icon templates today. If you are interested in more in-depth information on the icon templates, I did recently release a screencast on our website. That's vitechcorp.com. If you go to the My Support section and log in, you'll be able to access our premium screencasts. Everyone viewing the webinar live today already has access to My Support because you needed it to get into today's webinar. Katie did just chat through the chat feature a link to that so that you can check out our premium screencasts and see the in-depth information on that. Actually, I'm sorry, I misspoke. I said it was a premium screencast. That was actually my last webinar. So look at our webinar archive to find the icon templates. Okay, moving on. All of the options we've seen today can be adjusted in multiple places. And I've tried to let you know where that is, but I want to pause for a moment and detail the spectrum of how this works and to talk about how broad of a brush you're painting with when you make these changes. The broadest possible brush you can use is Project Preferences. Let's take a look at that. I'll click on Project, then Project Preferences. Now, in order to make any changes here, you must be a project administrator. That's a permission that can be granted to you through the Administrative Tools panel, and you have to have that in order to do this, because this is going to apply to the project as a whole. We have a lot of preferences here on the project level, giving you consistent presentation across your team. Ideally, you would set these early in your project lifecycle. Anything you set here will apply to all diagrams of that type. So if I go here to my EFFBD, I can tell it that I want all of my EFFBDs to have white backgrounds, or that I want all of my EFFBD function names to be italicized. I can do any of those things here. And this is going to push this change out to all EFFBDs across the project and available for all users. Now, I can override this on a lower level. If I have one particular diagram, I need to make a blue background, I can just go to that diagram and change it back to blue, and Core is going to be okay with that. Now, you see here we have a lot of options. Not all of these options are going to be available at every level of applying them. So Project Preferences really has a lot. The next one's not so rich. Let's take a look at that one. This is User Preferences. To get there, I click on Tools, User Preferences. And then if I look at my EFFBD options, you see there's much less here. These relate more to personal workflow. When I'm working in it today, maybe showing some grid lines in the background would help me get things aligned, or my diagram got really big and I need to scale it down so I can see it all. I might use the Fit to Window option. These are more about personal workflow. These also only apply to the user that set them. So if I add grid lines and Katie logs into my project and views that diagram, she's not going to see them because she has her own personal setting and user preferences for that. Taking the next step, more focused in its application, is Diagram Options, which we've already seen today. I'll click the Diagram Options icon in the toolbar and then use local icon settings. Settings here only apply to the specific diagram for the specific element that I'm viewing. So right now I'm looking at the EFFBD of the underscore perform geospatial library functions. If I change something here, it will not be shown on the EFFBD of the perform system context functions. It's just this view of this element only. So Diagram Options is really specific. Now it does allow me to set these and available for all users, and so that's great that everyone will be able to see the layouts that I use, the colors that I use, and we'll have something consistent. The finest point on the brush available is to set options for individual nodes. When you do things on Diagram Options, like if I change the size of a node, that's going to affect all nodes on the diagram. If I want to change just one, I should do it right here live on the diagram. Okay, moving on. The next thing I want to talk about are things I can add to my diagram to give some richness of information. Information blocks are a mini read-only property sheet that presents information on the parent element. So it's going to give me information on perform geospatial library functions. Let's grab an information block out of the diagram palette and drop it on. You see now I'm prompted to set what I want. I don't necessarily need the name since it's provided to me right here, but I will add the number, and I'd really like to see what requirements specify it. So we'll configure this the way I want and click OK. Now once I have this here, this is able to be manipulated the same way as other things in Core, so I'm going to just move it over a little bit. I can resize it, I can change the color, I can align it, I can do anything that I can do to a node, I can do to this. Now my resizing isn't great because I made description a little bit off, so let's just grab that. There we go. So there's a good looking alignment. Remember that these are configurable, so I can change the information in it, but they are not editable. If I double click on this to try to make a change, all it's going to do is allow me to configure. Notes on a diagram are directly editable, and these are great if you have something to say. So I'll just drop on a new note. Now I like these in that they look like a sticky note with the folded over corner. It alerts me that says, hey, this is a note, so that it's not necessarily true data, but just something I need to say. Now you can use these like a text box. If I double click, I can enter any text I desire. We'll give a hello world. I can also resize these, I can recolor them, I can align them, same as everything else. The next thing I can use is shapes. These work quite similarly. So let's drop a shape on from the palette. And the first thing that's going to happen is I get prompted for which shape I want to use. I really like the rounded rectangle, but there are also circumstances where the other ones are really valuable. Again, I can resize, I can color, I can align this. Let's make it a big, bold color. I can also add text if I double click. I can get text, read me. I'm really trying to draw attention to this. Now, beyond using these as adding a way to add simple text to a diagram, you'll notice if I stack them on top of other things, they fall to the background. So, one of the things I like to do is use them to encompass some information I'm trying to draw attention to. So, you see I put it behind this function and some of its outputs, and it's really calling and saying, hey, you need to look at this function. And so this is a great way to leave a nugget for somebody else on your team that might need to come back and take a look at this particular place. Now, before I move on, I want to caution you on notes and shapes, which is to be sure that you don't put information in here that should really be in elements in your model. Now, one of the things I've seen in the support desk as data has crossed back and forth is the tendency to insert information like risk information here in a note. So someone might say, you know, there's a particular risk on performing geospatial library functions because of, and we really need to take care of this. Well, when you insert it in a diagram in a note, it's just visual information, and it doesn't get tracked the way a risk should be tracked. A risk should be an element in the risk class connected to the function to which it's a concern, so that we can track the information and how we're analyzing this risk, how we're mitigating this risk, and other information in the decision process. So I just want to stop and caution you here to make sure that you're using these appropriately. It should feel very natural to use these, but just always make sure you ask yourself the question, should this be an element in core, or should this be a note? Now, traditional diagrams can be represented with nodes here, or, as you saw a moment ago on my physical block, I was using images. And images can be a great way to communicate with your stakeholders. All classes have a default image to them. So let me rewind a bit and say that we have given images for each of these elements in the database. So if I open an element by double-clicking on it to view its property sheet, and then go out to the secondary tab, I can see that we have defined an image for this particular element. If I use the Edit button, I can open this up. I can change it to any image on my computer. I can use any image in the library that installs with Core. We've given you a rich library with hundreds of images to choose from so that you don't have to hunt up your own. So you can use either one. And those are defined on element basis. Now, if you don't have an image that you're ready to use, but you want to go ahead and apply an image to it anyway, we have given you default images for the class. So let me take just a minute and show you where those are. If I expand the schema branch and then click on classes, I can view class information. We were just looking at the component class, so I'll show you that. And you see that our default image for a component is this little server-looking thing with a lightning bolt on it. And we've given you those for every class. So if you really quick need to throw an image on there, but you don't have time to get one, you can use these. Now let's go back to this and show you how to use them and how to flip them back and forth. If you have an element selected, this button right here is the image toggle button on the toolbar, and it will light up, and I can just click it to toggle back and forth. Now, just like all of these other buttons in the toolbar, I can use a variety of multi-select options. In this case, I'm just going to Control A for the sake of the demonstration to select it all and switch them all to images. And we've gone back to a very classic block and line engineering diagram. But maybe I really want to call attention to certain elements. I can switch certain ones back. So you see how selective use of this can draw my attention to certain areas while still technically representing this other information that's there for examination, but not saying this is the area of focus. Now, sometimes you need to hide content on a diagram. You might be meeting with a stakeholder and know that your technically accurate engineering diagram might be distracting, and that there's some information, if it just didn't have to be on screen today, that might be helpful today. So we've given you a capability to do that, borrowing a concept from SysML called eliding content. It allows you to leave your underlying model as it is and just adjust what's displaying today. So to do this, we're going to select an element and then mark it for hiding. And that's using this button right here. Now I've marked it, but nothing changed. Now I can use the display button to set the display mode. Now I'm going to set it to marked, where it's going to show me everything that's going to get hidden as a result of me hiding that one element. So it's everything related that is on the view because of that element. So now that I've seen the marked view, I'm going to show you the hidden view. And you see that everything was able to go away, and then I can quickly flip back. So lighting diagram content is really great for hiding some information temporarily while still maintaining the integrity of your model. Now, we did recently release a screencast that details the feature. You already have a link in chat for the My Support page. If you go to My Support and go to Premium Screencasts and then look in the Skill Building collection, you will find that new screencast that just came out maybe a month ago on eliding diagram content. It'll get deep and show you all of the details of that. Now, hierarchy and spider diagrams do have some special layout options that we need to make note of. So let's take a look. You can set these right on a hierarchy diagram. Here's our layout button, and you see on a hierarchy I have 4 options. And sometimes certain ones just make sense or better represent the information, so you can easily switch between them. The spider diagram has all of those and more. So we can get circular, right to left, a lot of options here. Radial is the default, but it's sometimes helpful to represent it in something that implies hierarchy while maintaining the interconnectedness of a spider diagram, in which case you may want to use something like hanging or horizontal. Just adjust these as you see needed to better represent your data. Now, core saves all of the settings in your diagram. We've talked today about changing colors, alignments, resizing notes, just a lot of different details. And all of this is going to get saved in what's called a stored view. As soon as you leave the diagram, a stored view is created. So if I just move this over here, and maybe I'm going to make it, let's make the fill color red. So I've really called it out. Now, as soon as I click away, I'm just going to switch over to the hierarchy. It got saved. It created a stored view. And if I go back, it's there. Now, if Katie logs in and views this diagram, she's going to see that alignment with that font, with that fill color. So let's take a look at where these are managed. We've given you what we call a stored view browser. Over in the project pane, under the utilities branch, you'll see stored views. Just click on that. Now you're going to get a list. There's really 2 lists here, 2 different ways to dive in. I can look at them by class. So each one, all of these classes have stored views related to them. Or if I only want to look at certain diagrams, I can look just at my physical hierarchy diagrams or just at my interface in squares. So if I click on these, I will see all of the element names that have a stored view, which particular diagram they are, the date that they were last saved, last accessed, who did them, and it gives me some information. Maybe if I'm wondering, I just went in here and I aligned all of those and somebody moved some of those things around. I'm wondering why, but I need to know who did it. I can come in here and see that Katie changed my alignment, check with her, and she says, well, it really made more sense and communicated better and let me know about what's going on. So this traceability of who did what is really great. I can also jump right out to the diagram by double-clicking on one. I can also delete the stored view. So let's go back to, I believe it was a spider diagram that I just messed with. Remember, I moved the alignment and made the color red. If I do this and just delete it, it's going to go all the way back to defaults. So I believe we were looking at physical context, spider, and you see that changed back to the way it was. It's important to know all outputs from your core repository are going to use the stored view. This is so that the diagram is output exactly the way you last saw it. Core is going to assume you left it the way you wanted it, and always do your outputs the same way. That's the HTML report, or if you run an SDD, or you simply save a diagram out to an image file, it's always going to happen for you. Use these techniques strategically. It's very easy to overdo a good thing. And let's go back to my EFFBD to illustrate that. This is a bit of a mess. While showing you all of these, I made a visually cluttered diagram that doesn't tell me where to look. This tells me that there's just, it's a bit overwhelming. So what I might do is get rid of some stuff, pare down, and really be clear about what I'm trying to do. This is much clearer. When I come here, I am alerted that the stuff inside this orange box is really important. I need to check it out. So just be careful that you don't overdo a good thing and put too much in a view and confuse your reader about what their focus is in that moment. And finally, be selective. One bad font color can significantly harm communication when it makes a diagram hard to read. So watch your color choices and watch your contrast. All right, Katie, that wraps up what I had for you today. Do we have any questions?
Yeah, thank you very much, Bethany. We do have a few questions. If you have any additional questions that you think of, please use the question control panel or the question tab on your control panel on your webinar panel that's there. And the first one I have is from Cheryl, and she asks, if I've already made changes to my diagram at the diagram level and then make changes at the project preference level, will that override my customizations that I made?
Okay. Great question, Cheryl. Let me go back and explain how Core is going to build a diagram. When I try to open this EFFBD I was just viewing, when I click on this button, the first thing Core is going to do is get the project preferences information and say, what is the default on this view? And it's going to have that. And then it's going to go and say and look for a stored view. Remember, those stored views contain information like your colors, your alignments, your notes, and such. And so it has the default. It's going to layer on your stored view and make any changes as related in your stored view. So the answer is, if I made all my font colors red, went through project preferences, and then after that, as a I went in and said, hey, I really want these three blocks to have black text. That black text is going to be sticky, and it's going to stay.
Thank you very much. We do have one more question from Nathan, and he would like to find out, how do permissions relate to diagrams and being able to save my visual changes?
Great question. Was that Nathan?
Mm-hmm.
Nathan? Okay. Permissions are going to work exactly as you'd expect them to. If you have the ability to view a diagram, you're going to be able to see it. But maybe I have the ability to view the parent function, but not one of the children that's in the view. You're still going to see the child. But what you'll see instead of the name and the specific information is it will say insufficient privilege to access. So of course I'm going to let you know there's something here, but we're not going to let you see it because somebody said you can't. All right, so it's going to be alerted. It's going to feel natural with your permission structure. Further, on your ability to modify a diagram, you have to have write access to the parent element, which is always listed up here in the corner. You may have read access and be able to see it, and you'll even be able to move things around. But when you click out of the diagram, Core is not going to save your stored view if you don't have write access. So we think that's natural. It's the way we think permissions feel good and the way you'd expect them to work.
All right, thank you very much. If you have any other questions or comments for Bethany, I'm going to ask her to go ahead and put her contact information up on the screen for you.
We're actually going to put that in chat today.
Okay, so the best way to reach out to Bethany is either with the email address she just sent out over chat, or to contact us at support@vitechcorp.com. You can also ask questions in the forum on our website at community.vitechcorp.com or on our LinkedIn group page, which you can find by going to linkedin.com and searching for Vitech Corporation. And that does wrap up today's presentation. I'd like to thank you all for joining us. Please keep an eye on your inbox for more webinar invitations over the next few weeks. We also keep our online calendars updated with upcoming webinars. You can keep an eye out there. At the conclusion of today's webinar, a survey is going to open on your screen. If you could, please take a moment to give us feedback on today's presentation or to let us know what topics you'd like to see covered in future webinars. Thank you everyone for joining us and have a wonderful day.